Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Maya Watson, and I'm a Research and Policy Analyst at the Information and Communications Technology Council, or ICTC. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our organization, ICTC has been Canada's center of expertise for the digital economy for over 25 years. I will be moderating this ICTC panel on farmer-driven innovation and the future of Canada's AgTech ecosystem. So, as we know, Canada is a force of innovation when it comes to agricultural technologies. To keep Canada's agtech sector competitive and sustainable, however, agtech innovation must prioritize farmer input. But often, farmers are not involved in the planning and research stages of development. In fact, one of the sections on agtech adoption in our new report, Canada's Agri-Food Tech Future, Sowing the Seeds for Tomorrow, details how increased farmer involvement in agtech development would not only improve the product, but also make farmers much more likely to adopt. Make sure to keep your eyes peeled for the release of this report in late October or early November of this year. Now, the four specialists speaking today all engage with primary producers in effective and interesting ways and/or are primary producers themselves. Today's panel will start with a short presentation by these experts about their organizations and relevant projects, followed by a moderated discussion. If you have questions for any of our presenters, please ask them in the chat, and I will make sure to raise them during the Q&A section. This presentation will be recorded and available on the Digital Think Tank by ICTC YouTube channel. So in a moment, Keith Curry, the Vice President of the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, will kick off our discussion. Keith is a Collingwood area hay and sweet corn farmer and former president of the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. He has 25 plus years of experience with the OFA. Keith has a diploma in agriculture production management from Ridgetown College. After graduating, he returned home to manage an 8th generation dairy and cash crop farm in Simcoe County with his wife, Janice, and 4 children. Keith's operation now focuses on production of grains and oilseed, forages for dry hay, along with sweet corn and gladulous flour production. Keith has served as director of the Simcoe County Holstein Club, where he served as county delegate for Guncore, member of the Dairy Herd Improvement Association, Simcoe District Cooperatives, Simcoe County Milk Producers, Stainer Farmers Cooperative, and finally, the Collingwood Agricultural Society. Now it's time to begin this event. Over to you, Keith.
Hi, Keith. I apologize to butt in here, but it looks like you're on mute.
You're absolutely right. That's more better now, isn't it?
There you go. I'll have Fernaz start your slides over and we'll kick that off again.
Perfect.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that. Perfect. So a little bit about the Canadian Federation of Agriculture. We do represent 200,000 farm families from coast to coast to coast. And as you can see by this picture, this highlights the devastating drought that we've been facing in Western Canada this year. And thinking about the state of our ag tech ecosystem, I thought it would be beneficial to take a step back and look at what's driving farmers to innovate. And of course, the central focus for farmers today is climate change and the importance of drought-resistant crop varieties and improved efficiencies in water usage. Climate change success through sustainability, resilience, and innovation is critical to the future of Canadian agriculture. And we see these 3 key areas being critical to the success. And I'm just waiting for my slide to advance.
Hi, Farnaz. Would you be able to manually move them for Keith, please, so we can continue? Thank you.
Perfect. So as I mentioned, there are three key areas that's critical to our success. Research and incentives for climate change mitigation and adaptation are important. Also, trade and digital infrastructure to adopt new technologies and access markets, as well as direct investments to respond to new risks and recognize ecological goods and services. But a broad perspective is required when looking at AgriTech and innovation. Yes, it refers to equipment and automation, but also biotech and new crop varieties, AI and data analysis, and the continued application of traditional practices, but in new ways, such as integrated pest management, for example. Data and measurability is key to all of this, highlighting the importance of Canada's innovative infrastructure. Good data drives good outcomes in on-farm decision-making and policy-making, but also in guiding critical private sector investment to agriculture through the emergence of environmental, social, and governance investing. Precision agriculture is a perfect example where environment and productivity improvements are identified. We can go to the next slide. Precision agriculture is a perfect example where environment and productivity improvements are identified through new technologies for data collection and analysis, but are dependent on reliable high-speed broadband that many farmers lack. Precision ag technology also holds immense potential for data collection and represents an investment area that farmers can see a clear and immediate return on investment. However, adaptation is stymied by continued deficiencies in rural connectivity and platform cross-compliance. Farmers need innovations that can communicate both externally and with one another to make transformative innovations possible. Strategic infrastructure investments can now spur immense co-benefits as we move forward. To effectively drive on-farm climate solutions, we also need top talent coming to agriculture in Canada as an innovative sector. Soil scientists, computer programmers, software developments, geneticists, etc. The on-farm skills of the future mean today's students need access to modern labs, classrooms, and opportunities to engage through their learning with Canadian agriculture. At the farm level, AgTech adaptation requires significant upfront capital in an already capital-intensive industry. These investments can be challenging when they come with expected return. Where precision ag might bring immediate efficiencies, others have less certain returns due to evolving climate change risks. These seem uncertainties also bring immediate risks and costs. At the same time, the benefits of innovation are not always focused at farm gate, but on broader environmental goods that don't necessarily bring clear value in the marketplace. Farmers should not be bearing the full risk. We do need to de-risk and incentivize these actions. But I don't want to paint the picture, so we can move to the next one. I don't wish to paint the picture that environmental innovation is purely for public good. As a small population with large natural capital assets, Canada has a unique opportunity to become a sustainable provider of agri-food products with immense opportunity in global and here in domestic markets. However, we need the infrastructure to support this. Product value often comes in the value added. The roads and bridges are important, but broadband and platforms that tell our story through evidence and metrics that leverage on-farm data and that stand up to the ever-growing global scrutiny are crucial to that value added. To this end, CFA is involved in the development of a national index on agri-food performance. While still a work in progress, this would entail a public-private center for agri-food benchmarking to respond to diverse sustainability criteria and environmental social governance reporting requirements. CFA is also partnering to develop the Canadian Agri-Food Sustainability Initiative, a platform for centralizing supply chain sustainability data and certification requirements. This would support the aforementioned index, capturing and communicating the best management practices and translating them into beneficial outcomes across the Canadian agri-food system. All of these investments support innovation, but they also provide a means for policymakers and investors to recognize agriculture as a provider of ecological goods and services. A few examples would be carbon markets, conservation support, innovative marketing of on-farm activities that speak to net zero or regenerative production. All this centers around innovations adopted on farm to enhance productivities and environmental outcomes. We need innovations in data collection and transparency to really communicate what's happening on farm to markets and government both here and around the world. Even if we have a great story to tell and find a better way to tell it, we can't be complacent. Canada is often cited as a country that lags on innovation and risk-taking. Farmers are no strangers to taking on considerable risks, but we do it within reason. We need an ecosystem, both from policymakers and financial markets, that supports this. The true cost and benefits associated with producing food need to be acknowledged and valued in the marketplace. Currently, much of this cost is borne on farm. Moving forward, all of this starts and ends with innovation and adaptation of technologies on the farm. Technological advances improve environmental outcomes and our ability to communicate them, while supporting the incentives and investments needed to drive further advancements and continuous improvements. In conclusion, I've seen a lot of changes over my lifetime, but CFA and its members are excited about what the future brings and being a partner to having it come to fruition. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Keith. And I truly apologize about those technological difficulties. Not sure what was going on there, but we'll make sure that doesn't happen in the future. Also, thank you to Farnaz for manually going through the slides in the backstage here. Next up, we have Chris McPhee. Chris is an innovation management specialist at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, where he supports a nationwide network of living labs through agricultural climate solutions and the Living Laboratories Initiative. These two programs apply an integrated approach to agricultural innovation by bringing together farmers, scientists, and other partners to co-develop, test, and monitor new practices and technologies in a real-life context. Prior to this role, he served for 9 years as editor-in-chief of the Technology Innovation Management Review, an international journal focusing on emerging topics in innovation from a multidisciplinary perspective. In both Canada and Scotland, he has held various innovation-related roles in the private sector, the public sector, and academia, primarily in the areas of education, healthcare, and science. Chris holds a Master's of Applied Science in Technology and Innovation Management from Carleton University in Ottawa, and a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, as well as a Master's of Science degree in Biology from Queen's University in Kingston. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Maya. Thank you for this introduction. So yes, I'm going to talk to you about Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's Living Labs for Farmer-Centered Innovation. These living labs bring together farmers, scientists, and other collaborators to co-develop and test innovative practices and technologies to address agro-environmental issues. So Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada recognized that urgent action is needed to accelerate our response to climate change and other agro-environmental issues. And like Keith, I'm experiencing a problem where my slides are not advancing, Farnaz. Okay, so I was talking about the sense of urgency with respect to accelerating our response to climate change. And this urgency drove the search for new ways to help accelerate the development and adoption of sustainable practices and technologies by Canadian farmers. So in 2018, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada launched a nationwide network of living labs to help the sector adjust to climate change, reduce water contamination, improve soil and water conservation, and maximize habitat capacity and biodiversity. So this was a network of living labs, but what is a living lab? A living lab is a way for various groups to work together, especially users, to co-develop innovations that are more likely to be adopted. And adoption is more likely because a living lab creates conditions suited to improving the fit between an innovation and the user's needs. Living labs have been used in a lot of different contexts. So in these examples, we see educational software in hospitals, and libraries, in an urban smart city context. Also more recently and increasingly in agriculture. So that bottom right is a picture of one of our living labs in Prince Edward Island. But in all cases, living labs follow 3 core principles. The first one is user-centered innovation. This means the activities focus on the user's needs and those users are involved throughout the development process. It's not just a little bit of feedback at the beginning or a little bit of feedback on what's been produced, but it's direct, ongoing collaboration and participation in innovation activities throughout the project from start to finish. The second one is working in partnership. So this means a living lab brings together different organizations from different areas of expertise, but they're all working towards a common goal. And that means, we have farmers, we have research scientists, producer associations, indigenous groups, NGOs, economists, social scientists, and so on, all working together. And then we test those innovations in the user's real life context, where they would actually use them. So in our case, that means farmers testing the innovations on their own farms. So how does this work in our living labs? We have a consortium of partners in each living lab that leads activities to co-develop, test, and evaluate practices. The farmers are at the center of the activities, and they're involved throughout the project. The practices are tested on farm and supported by the scientific research and socioeconomic analyses. And then we have an innovation cycle that drives the improvements. So these are the three phases in our innovation cycle. We go from co-development to test and evaluate, and we repeat this cycle to refine the innovations. We think about co-development, first of all. In the co-development phase, we identify and refine the user's needs and the desired outcomes. This is a very creative step. We have workshops where farmers exchange ideas and experiences with scientists, economists, social scientists, and so on. And then we take the innovations that we want to try that we've co-developed, and we bring them out into our test phase, and that's to try them out in the field. So we conduct experiments, we acquire new data, we explore and develop new knowledge, and the farmers find out firsthand what these innovations are like, what they're like to use, how well they fit with their businesses and systems under real conditions. And then finally, evaluation. So this is the last step. We take stock of the results. These are all different types of data, scientific data, user data, and so on, and take all that we've learned. We feed it back into that process, so back into that co-development phase so that we can further improve the innovations. And over time, we've repeated these cycles. And so as we move, as we repeat the cycle each time, we're learning more and more about the innovation. The innovations are becoming refined. And hopefully by the end of this, they've been refined sufficiently that they'll be a very close fit to the user needs and will be more likely to be adopted. So that's the approach that we've been using in our Living Laboratories initiative. This was a 5-year program where we have 4 sites across the country that are up and running right now in the Eastern Prairies, Ontario, Quebec, and the Atlantic region. And they're working on beneficial management practices to address a range of agro-environmental issues. So if we take Eastern Prairies, for example, they're focusing on soil health, water management, like the picture shown here, habitat conservation and climate change, 13 partner organizations, more than 20 federal scientists, and about 50 participants in total in that one living lab, looking at 15 different practices. But this year we launched a new program, Agricultural Climate Solutions. This is a 10-year program that focuses on carbon sequestration and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, in addition to other environmental co-benefits. With this program, we'll have a living lab right across the country, at least one in every province. And then, as I say, this is a 10-year program. And each of those living labs in the Agricultural Climate Solutions program will focus on innovations in agricultural practices that will store carbon and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we have a parallel program to help with the adoption immediately of existing practices. So I've described 2 programs, the Living Laboratories Initiative and the Agricultural Climate Solutions. Both of these programs use the same approach, the same Living Labs approach. In both cases, farmers are at the center of the innovation activities. They're having direct input into the development and improvement of the practices to fit with their needs. And that's my overview of how we're using the Living Labs approach to farmer-centered innovation at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. For us, it's early days yet, but we feel that Living Labs have great promise as a way to accelerate the development and adoption of sustainable practices by Canadian farmers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Tanya Humphrey. Tanya is the Vice President of Research and Development at Vineland Research and Innovation Center, a unique results-oriented organization dedicated to horticulture science and innovation. In this role, Tanya Humphrey develops the strategy and guides the direction of Vineland's innovation portfolio. She heads up a team of scientists and engineers and oversees the progress of R&D activities, as well as decision-making processes to ensure the research portfolio meets the needs of the horticulture sector. She also works closely with Vineland's business development team to facilitate the movement of innovations out to the marketplace. Tanya is an advocate for innovation in agriculture, emphasizing building connections between different industries and scientific disciplines. She is also vice chair of the Agri-Food Innovation Council Board of Directors. Tanya holds a PhD in plant biology from the University of Queensland, Australia, and in her early career held research positions with the University of Toronto and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. All yours, Tanya.
Thanks, Maya, and thanks everyone for joining. So today I want to tell you a bit about innovation at Vineland, how we do it and how we engage the growers in our innovation process. So I wanted to start a bit further back and think about what are we even talking about innovation? It's a word we hear a lot about. Everyone thinks they know what it means, but we're not always talking about the same thing. So if you look it up in the dictionary, innovation means a new idea or a new product. But those of us who work in this space know that it's a little bit more than that. And I like this definition here, which comes from Wikipedia. But the key point is innovation is really about the practical implementation of ideas. And that really is the key. It's about what are we doing with that idea. And then, so that's the definition. And we think about how does the process work? Of course, it's very complex. You know, it's a complex process that starts with R&D, and there's a whole lot of different parts involved. It's not a nice linear process with an idea and then a product at the end. There's all kinds of parallel pathways and feedback loops and stop starts, things that work and don't work. It's really a complex process. And of course, there's a whole lot of different players involved. There's your, educational institutions, research organizations. There's a whole lot of government funding and government groups involved. There's all the private sector entities that are involved. And typically what we see is the farmer right at the end who's expected to just take all of this innovation products and use it on your farm, and great benefits will ensue. But what we really understand is that the farmer is not just the recipient. They have to really be involved every step of the way. In every part of this innovation process needs to engage with the farmer. It doesn't mean they have to be innovators and do it all themselves, of course. It just means their input is a critical piece. So I want to tell a bit about how we do it at Vineland. As an organization, as Maya said in the intro, we're focused primarily in the horticulture sector, and we really are striving to increase the economic viability, sustainability, and competitiveness of businesses in horticulture. So mostly that means growers, but it also means the whole spectrum of businesses from, the input suppliers, the technology companies, right down to the retail and the end consumer. And we have a whole lot of research going on in different program areas, including plant variety development. Biological crop protection is a big one for us, where we, is to do traditional biological sciences. But also what we do is we try to think about not just the farmer, but of course the whole value chain, because, the farmer is one piece in the entire agricultural agri-food system. And if we solve a problem for a farmer in one position, we may be creating another challenge at retail or for somewhere else in the system. So we really need to look at that whole value chain and the systems approach to understand how innovation moves out to the marketplace and make sure that we succeed at every step. And so consumer is a big part of it, especially in horticulture. Horticultural products, fruits and vegetables, wine, these are consumer products. So it's critical we understand our consumer and that we're giving the growers the varieties and the products that meet those consumer demands. Also in this area, plant responses and environment is a lot about trees and urban landscapes, green spaces, and how do we get our nursery growers who produce the trees to be producing and supplying the municipalities and the developers and the corporate entities with the trees and landscaping products they need to succeed, and also for those plants to become established into successful urban green spaces. So again, it's a lot about understanding the entire value chain and the entire system and how the producers fit into that and how we can benefit them by creating those benefits along the chain. So I think I'm a bit stuck on that slide there. If you can click it forward. I wanted to talk to you mostly, though, the rest of my presentation about automation, because this is where I think it intersects mostly with this audience in ICT, because this is the space that uses big data, machine learning, heavy-duty computing, and this is also an area of high need in horticulture because, of course, most of the functions of managing the crop are still done by hand, and we're trying to automate a lot of those procedures. So I want to profile one project where it shows you how we engage with the grower, and this is smart irrigation. So the challenge here, it's a grower's challenge. A grower of greenhouse potted plants, has to manage irrigation decisions, and they essentially do this by walking up and down the aisles of the greenhouse, sticking fingers in pots, looking at the climate computer, and understanding, through experience, when is the right time to water. And so understanding the grower's need, we want to automate that to reduce water, reduce labor, and create better consistency. So we need to understand what is the decision-making process the grower goes through. And so our project was using the grower as the expert and going through a process of machine learning. So using the learning from the grower's decision-making process, using sensor data input from the climate control computer and sensors to make those decisions in an automated way, develop the algorithms that make the decisions. So we came up with a smart solution, this algorithm that makes watering decisions, but we have to think, how is the grower going to get his hands on this? How do we move it out to market to actually benefit the grower? And of course, that's where partnerships come in. And so partnering with Let's Grow, which is a subsidiary of a major global climate controls company in greenhouses, or Hugendorn, allows our algorithm to be integrated into their system, so it has the nice user interface and it connects with the entire greenhouse infrastructure. So we did that. We've tested the system by essentially setting up a comparison between a grower making decisions and our algorithm, and we found it does work. What we were able to show is a significant reduction in water usage, 15% less water, 47% less labor. But most importantly, what we created was a much more consistently high quality crop. And so we're achieving around 90% of the crop is grade A compared to the grower watering decisions achieving only around 60%. So that achieves a higher quality product and a higher premium that can be garnered by the grower. So the system works. It can be applied to 75% of different greenhouse crops, and we're in the process now of rolling it out into pre-commercial trials, both here and with our partner in the Netherlands. Through that partnership approach, we're able to get the technology in the hands of the growers in just a few short years. So that's my brief story. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Tanya. Fantastic presentation. Now, our final presenter today is Michael Burton. Michael is the Director of Engineering at Semios Technologies. He began his career as an embedded software developer and now oversees Semios' technical teams. Since joining in 2015, he's helped to evolve the efficiency and reliability of Semios' network, refine the data pipeline, and help shape Semios' strategy to guide the company to meet its purpose of helping nature feed the world's growing population. Offering precision ag as a service, Semios is one of the world's largest independent AgTech companies, servicing growers, agronomists, and ag retailers in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, and South Africa. The floor is yours, Michael.
Thank you, Maya. Yes, my name is Michael Burton. Semios is one of the largest independent AgTech companies in the world today. We are based in Vancouver, British Columbia. And today I want to talk about why we think AgTech is important and how we are working with farmers to solve the problems they're facing today and in the future. So why AgTech? Why is Semios passionate about helping farmers optimize their growing practices while also improving sustainability? As many of you have probably heard through media outlets, our global population continues to grow, and how we are going to feed that population is one of the biggest problems faced by humanity today. But we at Semios don't believe it has to be humanity versus nature, that through innovation we can work with nature to meet the needs of our growing population. that by monitoring and learning about the health of plants through granular data and providing tools for farmers to be able to action those learnings, we can produce more while also increasing sustainability. However, Semios doesn't have all the necessary tools today for every type of farmer, for every type of crop in all parts of the world. How a farmer grows nuts in Central Valley, California, which is pictured here, is very different than apple farmers in Italy. We even see variations within parts of a single orchard. What you're seeing here is a time lapse of conditions calculated from our sensors. There are variations within the site, and if you treat this block as a single unit, as is often done, you will not get optimal results. But as cool as this data is, it isn't enough for the farmer. How do farmers action these insights? How does Semios convince farmers to adopt our platform? There is a saying in the ag industry that farmers have 40 harvests in their career, 40 times to learn and improve. This clashes with the agile tech companies of today. Tech companies have the luxury of failing often and fast, rapid iteration, and accelerated innovation. This is why it is so important for ag tech companies to be focused on the farmer and working with their rhythms. Farmers need solutions, not just cool tech or moonshots or experiments that may or may not work. And if you do convince them to try out your tech, then you better make sure it works, that the farmer knows how they can use it and that they see the value in that first season. If you can't do that, then you probably won't get a second chance. Often, when we sign up a new customer, we only get on a small portion of their property, and that part of their property is the worst part of their operation. It is up to us to show that our solution can provide value in the hardest of conditions. And only when we do that do we see farmers increasing our commercial offering on their farm. The most valuable thing Semios has is the trust of our customers. We've earned that trust by ensuring that our solutions and products deliver results and value, that our more than 2 million sensors are working, that the farmers know how and when to leverage our tools and data insights. We work with them and take their feedback and guidance every year to improve. But IoT hardware is hard. Many of the farms around the world have become a graveyard for failed technology. These pictures here are of broken Semios equipment. But if and when our hardware breaks and stops working, how do we ensure our farmers can still use the system? How do we maintain that trust? We call it Precision Ag as a Service. And what that means is Semios not only designs and manufactures the IoT hardware, but we also install, monitor, and maintain all that equipment for the farmer. We have the tools, infrastructure, and field staff globally to ensure Semios is delivering what the farmer is paying for. So what are they paying for? Well, Semios started as a mating disruption company. We prevent moths and pests from having sex. Before someone objects about including images of sex acts within my presentation, I've made sure to pixelate and censor the image to ensure this presentation avoids an X rating. All joking aside, this is a very serious problem being faced by all farmers in the world today. Moths lay eggs, eggs hatch, and the larvae do serious damage to the crop. To prevent this damage, farmers use toxic chemicals to kill the pests. But these chemicals are not good for the environment and ends up killing the beneficial insects as well. This is where our pheromones come in. Pheromones are the chemicals given off by pests to attract their mate. By smartly releasing these pheromones into the farm, we confuse the pests and prevent them from mating. This reduces the pest population each generation and reduces the need for pesticides. As our business grew, we found ourselves collecting a lot of data from our pheromone dispensers and weather stations. Currently, more than 500 million data points are collected daily. We started to notice the microclimates that exist at each property and within regions. We learned that the standard models worked for some, but not all farmers. And so we started to see how else we could help farmers besides stopping moths from having sex. We started to add more sensors to our sites. Leaf wetness sensors for disease prediction, soil moisture for irrigation and tree health, temperature sensors at varying heights for frost monitoring, all with a focus to help farmers make data-driven decisions, reduce risks, and improve results. Now we can tie our data and relate it to other sources of data, trap counts, scouting reports, irrigation activity, etc. And we're able to produce site-specific models, guidelines, and recommendations to help farmers make improved, more sustainable decisions and improve their results. We are starting to understand the health of each tree and allow farmers to action that insight at scale. We are bringing in controls for wind machines and irrigation systems, as well as record keeping and regulatory submission. Semios is building a platform so farmers don't have to jump around multiple systems to run their operations. Along with expanding our product offering to help farmers in Canada and the US, we've been expanding our offerings globally. This map shows the current snapshot of where Semios is commercial today. Next season, we are planning on the addition of even more countries. To conclude, I want to leave where I started, by showing how powerful and amazing nature is. I believe we can grow enough food to feed the world and our growing population. We just need to continue to work with farmers to develop the solutions they need to not only work sustainably, but to also improve their results. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for that insight into your company and also the fun moth pick. Thanks everyone else for those engaging presentations as well. You all rose to the 20-second per slide format magnificently despite odd technical glitches. So right now we're going to move on to the Q&A session, and we've already got a couple of audience questions, but before that, we have some pre-recorded questions from my colleagues. And the first one is addressed to you, Keith, from Mairead.
When people think of AgTech, they often think of big equipment, drones, and on-farm sensors, but you spoke a lot about traceability and metrics. Do these technologies also require additional AgTech developments, or is it simply about first leveraging what we already have?
Well, thanks for the question. And it's a little of both. Certainly continuing to further develop what we have is important. You just heard Michael talk about integrated pest management techniques, which have been around for a while, but further refining them to be more specific on farm and specific with crop are key to having that tool in the toolbox that we can use. RFID tags in cattle for tracing, robotic milkers that take samples of the milk and can identify healthy cattle, sick cattle. These are examples of existing technologies that we can improve on. But as we further get into things like even marketing, where does things like Bitcoin come into play in all of this? There's all kinds of technology out there that is just on the horizon about to happen that, the further we can do it, invest in this technology, the better opportunities we have for more advanced food production right across Canada.
Wonderful. Thanks for that thoughtful answer, Keith. Our next question is for Chris from Mancharn.
Hi, my question for the panel is, as I understand it, AAFC's living labs are focused primarily on farming practices in the form of beneficial management practices. So can the living labs approach be applied to technology-based innovations?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. It's kind of ironic. We definitely are focusing on beneficial management practices in our living labs, and the approach we're taking is quite new in the agricultural sector. But in the world of living labs, which is actually, it's been going since at least 2006, and it actually grew out of sort of a high-tech context. So it's very possible. Most living labs have a lot of technology-based innovations, and those, when the actual innovation is technology, and when you have private sector for-profit companies, it gives a lot of benefits in terms of being able to have deep insights from users, being able to interact with other actors along the whole value chain, as Tanya mentioned, and be able to develop integrated solutions, that kind of thing. So the world of living labs it grew out of a tech world, actually.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris. And just being mindful of time, I'm going to refrain from any follow-ups right now and pass the floor to my colleague, Marina, who's got a question for Michael.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation. And I have one question for the panelists. As we all know, more than 90% of businesses in Canada are small, less than 10 employees. And my question is, what advice would you give to new Canadian AgTech startups to increase their chances for success? Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think one thing I kind of mentioned in my presentation is you got to plan for a much longer adoption and growth curve as an ag tech company that you traditionally wouldn't plan for as a more traditional technological company. You get one chance a season sometimes for these events, and so it's very important that you kind of plan your capital and your spend and your development around, expect a much longer time frame. Semius has been around for almost 11 years, commercial for 5 of those. And also make sure that you're not just building cool tech that causes more problems than it solves. And it's been mentioned by other panelists of that, right? Like often people think they have a cool thing and they just go, oh, go experiment, go try. But growers, it's not that they're risk adverse. It's just that, as I said, they have 40 tries at this, and one bad season can really just ruin their whole career. And so they want to make sure that what they're paying for, and they usually have very thin margins, is going to give those results. So if you are experimenting and still developing, be honest with the grower and build that relationship and make sure that your stuff works, and then you'll get the better traction later on.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's actually something that came up again and again as we were doing interviews for our report that's coming out soon as well. Yeah, clear return on investment, and this because you only have a certain amount of seasons to integrate the new technology. Building off of your advice for Canadian startups, I actually have a question for Tanya. So from my understanding, Vineland tries to partner with and support Canadian companies as much as possible, whether that be for market insights, product development, supply chain, or manufacturing. For example, you recently partnered with INO, Canada's largest technology center in optics and photonics, to develop new robotic harvesting solutions to help with Canadian mushroom and greenhouse cucumber growers be more efficient and productive, while also offering relief from labor shortages. Could you elaborate on how your organization approaches these Canadian partnerships and why it's part of your mandate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty simple answer. You know, we're a small organization. We've got less than 100 people to move the entire horticulture sector forward through innovation. You know, it's a pretty grand plan for a small organization. We need other people. We cannot do it alone. And we also operate in this kind of unique space where, you know, if you do think of innovation as an upstream, downstream process with your kind of academic discovery science happening at the front end, and then the implementation at the down the bottom end, we're in the middle. You know, we do a translational piece. We're very applied, practical, business focused, but at the same time, we're not a business. We need to partner with the company who's ultimately going to license, manufacture, sell, and follow up support for whatever that product is. So the obvious thing is partnering with private sector, because they're the ones who are going to sell the products and serve ultimately the customer as the grower. But we also partner upstream as well. And INO is a great example of that, because they have a capability a lot more specialized than what we do. We have, you know, we have our own engineering team who focused on robotics and automation, but INO has real specialty in vision systems. And so we can, you know, cherry pick their expertise and bring it into our projects. Similarly, we do that with university partners, government researchers, wherever makes sense, to bring a collaborator in where their expertise can complement what it is we're trying to do, and we plug it into our system. So we partner with all kinds of organizations, from the research side, but right through to the private sector in particular, because they're the ones who deliver the innovation to the marketplace. We absolutely depend on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And we actually have an audience question now as a follow-up from Alana King. And she asks, Tanya, as Canada grows in AgTech, how does this affect our role as a leader in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals in food security and sustainability internationally?
Oh, that's a complicated question. You know, I think I don't have a good answer for that, other than, you know, Canada's got a lot to offer, you know, both internally within Canada. You know, we have a lot of technology expertise, as well as companies who are very well positioned to take innovations to the next level, to deliver that to benefits in Canada and globally. So I think, you know, Canada does have a lot to offer, and certainly we could do better by thinking more globally more often. You know, I think very often Canada tends to focus on solving the current problems here and now in this country, or even in this province and this region. We tend to be quite narrow in the focus. But if we do take a global view, we understand these issues are bigger than us. And, you know, if I think about automation, labor is an issue in Canada, just as it is in most of the rest of the world. You know, it doesn't matter. Mexico is a low price producer of tomatoes and horticultural products, but they're trying to automate too, because labor is still costly in their system. And so a lot of these things are global issues. And if we can improve it here, we can apply that same lens and help out the rest of the world too.
Yeah, fantastic answer to a difficult question. I was wondering if any of you had any thoughts on that one, especially Michael, perhaps, as you're expanding internationally right now as well.
Yeah, I think Canada obviously is a great place of innovation because of there's lots of grants. So why we like being a Canadian company, they help us do our R&D innovation. But definitely we see the partnerships between sustainability but also food security often clash, and you have different groups kind of trying to drive both things and not considering how pushing one might hurt the other. I think EU is actually taking a really big stance with the Green Deal and have taken a lead in kind of thinking about how that can kind of help the growers and ensure that we have food security while also pushing sustainability. And I think Canada needs to be thinking the same thing, where, again, with our focus about if you have the right data and you have the right tech, you can be sustainable and also improve results. But just cutting off the pipes and making sure a grower doesn't use enough, only uses a certain amount of water, just ends up making us use less water, but also having less food.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. And then moving on, unless Keith or Chris, you wanted to comment from on that guy? That's a no. All right. Then we've got a quick question from BD Turner 28 to Chris. He asks, Chris, how many total acres are involved in AAFC's Living Labs?
I wish I had a really quick answer. I wish I knew the exact number for this, but it's a very interesting question because it's phrased as how many are involved. So we have, I'll give an idea of the kind of scope and scale of what we're doing, but I would differentiate between, we're very intensively working on these innovations on a relatively small number of farms, but in terms of the potential impact in terms of the farms and number of farms involved with greater adoption would be enormous. But in terms of the scope and the numbers we're working with, so we have 4 living labs right now, and we have, within each living lab, we probably have in the range of between 10 and 40 farmers testing innovations on their own farms, and sort of another number of farmers locally watching them very closely. And so, with our 4 living labs, we're well over 100 farms. I don't know the exact number, and that's with 4 living labs, and we're going up to 10 or more. So that's the kind of scope that we're going across the country. And then, as I say, but the number gets very big if we achieve our goal of increasing adoption to those other acres which are the big numbers.
Yeah, let's hope the number keeps growing. And then over to you, Keith. Alana King has another question. She asks, where are the funding gaps in R&D in AgTech in Canada? Do we have any hope of adapting agricultural practices to climate change goals with current funding models? Oh, you're on mute there, Keith.
Seems to be a theme for me. So a two-part question there. With respect to investment, I think in general terms, investing in the green economy aspect as it pertains to on-farm, I think is very, very important. We do have some innovative things with respect to crop inputs, but I think the more that we can do on-farm, in particular with vehicles we're using on-farm, we don't have electric vehicles available, and probably won't be for the next decade at least. Yet we have to work under the constraints of what's going on with reducing greenhouse gas emissions and fossil fuels. So that's a problem. That's problematic for farmers. So getting more green economy stuff investment, I think, would be key. With respect to adapting the agricultural practices to climate change, we already are. We're taking all the sustainable practices we have in farming and applying them on farm as much as we feasibly can possibly do it right now. The more research we have into improving soil health, different types of cover crops that we can use, how we can mitigate and manage our buildings and what we use our buildings for, whether it's livestock, whether it's cropping situations. I think we just continue to push that ball up the hill as far as we can, and what we're doing is growing every day, but we need more of that kind of research, and that's going to come with stuff like Chris is doing. And if I can just very quickly add, Maya, the key to all this research and development is on information that we can get. And what I mean by that is, if we don't know where the database is to start, how do we know how we reach where we want to go? So we need that data, that base data line, with stuff like Chris is doing, for example, to make sure we know where we're starting from before we try and set any goals to reach.
Yeah, great answer. Also, I just want to open it up to the floor. If anyone wants to hop on after these questions, just jump right in. And if not, we will go over to another question. This one's by Helen Hambley. Also, thank you to the viewers for sending in such fantastic questions. So yeah, Helen Hambley, R2B2 Project, asks, Michael, do your customers / clients struggle with connectivity and experience limits the full functionality of the digital tech? What can your firm do about this? And then Keith, just in the back of your mind, she also tags you in this question, so you'll be answering this next.
Yeah, for sure. The kind of connectivity within orchards and farms is a huge problem, and it's kind of why we went to the service model. So when growers are interacting with Semios and becoming clients of ours, we own and kind of install and make sure that what they're paying for is working, so they don't have to take the weather station and walk around and try to find the signal. Field services of Semios will show up, and we have mobile apps and knowledge to kind of ensure that it works. And in some really bad sites, that might mean throwing the gateway in a really weird place, and then trying to bridge that signal into the orchard, or having special antennas put on ad hoc once there. But really, it's the success of Semios has been driven a lot by that partnership with growers and saying, hey, you're paying for a solution, we will make sure that solution works. And so they don't have to be technology geniuses, they don't have to be debugging and maintaining. We do that for them. And as Tanya mentioned earlier, labor is a huge issue within ag. And so having our boots on the ground takes off that pressure so that their people can do what they do best and be helping them grow, and not just looking at weather stations and trying to decide why isn't it working.
Yeah, great answer. Our report also found that connectivity was a major impediment to AgTech adoption. So wonderful to hear that there's companies out there trying to fix that. And then, yeah, over to you, Keith.
Yeah, so just to follow up where Michael was, I mean, certainly we have opportunities through satellite feeds to get broadband, but the cost is very, very high, and most farmers aren't going to dive into that cost. Over the last, I'll say almost a decade, most of our self-propelled vehicles coming off the line are equipped with modems now. So the expansion of 5G, the 5G network, is going to be crucial for us to really tap into the technological advancements that are coming down the pipe. So part of my presentation was talking about infrastructure investment, and that certainly is one key part of it, that 5G expansion right across the country, so that we can really tap into innovations on the technological side and put them into practical use and really grow the industry.
Thank you. Apologies, my Wi-Fi cut out there for a second. Speaking of connectivity issues. Yeah, and I'm just going to switch tracks for a little bit and finish off by asking Michael one last question. So as listeners may already know, and we've talked about this a little bit, just over a month ago, Semios acquired AgWorld, which is a leading data-driven farm management platform based in Australia. Semios and AgWorld now service growers, agronomists, and ag retailers in all of the places I mentioned earlier. So Michael, how does Semios plan to keep the local needs, climates, and paths of its farmers across the world in sight as Semios becomes one of the largest independent ag tech solution providers in the world?
I think it goes down to that grower relationship. and the fact that our core solution is built upon site-specific granular data that growers can leverage. And so I think what AgWorld enables us to do is through their vast network of acres and relationships and global presence, allows us to then offer that Semio solution in partnership with them, so that the grower can get a more holistic view of their farm, and so they're able to manage kind of the whole crop cycle of their farm, and so Semios and AgWorld can then work together as that platform to really drive that innovation for each grower for their unique situation, so that they can improve their ROI over time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So let me just check that I didn't miss any audience questions. Oh, we've got a response from Alana, actually. She says, I'm pretty sure we've got the 5+ best minds in agriculture and ag tech in this room together. Can I buy you all lunch sometime maybe so that we can sort some of these problems out? Hashtag not kidding. You can take Alana up on that in the comments section. And then from Bikram at Hikari, apologies for the mispronunciation if there was one. He says, lettuce, apples, or high tree? Which one would you pick for Canada with a focus on BC ag tech? Question for everybody.
By high tree, he means cannabis, I'm assuming?
I'm assuming. not quite so sure on that one.
Yeah, I will let the other panelists talk, because I don't choose the crops. We just help the growers who are making the choices and what they grow.
The correct answer is all the above. The reality is we have to feed not only domestically, but the world, and everybody has different tastes. And we are quite capable of producing so many different products in this country. Why would you limit it to one or two? Grow them all.
Great answer. Anyone else want to take a swing at that one? All right, we'll leave it on Keith then. So I will wrap it up now. If there are any other audience questions that you think of later and that we didn't manage to get to, I'll forward those along to the panelists. And I just want to thank everyone again for attending today's discussion. It was fantastic. I really appreciate all of our panelists' participation. And to everyone that tuned in, thank you so much. And stay tuned for ICTC's AgTech report that will be released in late October or early November this year. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Maya.
Thanks, Maya.
Thanks, Maya.
Thank you.